let's say Kimi K3 hot takes. Is this the third best model in the world?
I think the answer is a clear yes. People love shitting on benchmarks. And I think benchmarks definitely have their problems. But I think sort of if you take a composite of all the main benchmarks and just look at the model rankings, they have been directionally correct over time. And I think if you look at that composite today, there's like a pretty clear top three with Fable, Sol 5.6, and now Kimi K3. And they're sort of just like always above everyone else, which includes, of course, other open source guys like, DeepSeek and GLM and whoever, but also like very notably, it includes Google and Meta and SpaceX. Which I think is honestly, it's an extremely impressive and a very remarkable feat from the moonshot guys. Google in particular, I think, should feel incredibly embarrassed right now. November, December 2025, everyone thought that like the clear AI big three was Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI. And even when I talk to boomers today, they still seem to think the clear top three is Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI. And it's just like clearly not the case anymore. So yeah, I'd say definitely third best model in the world. I do think it's overall still worse than Fable and Sol 5.6. Kind of funny that they explicitly said that in their like model release blog post. Maybe it's some like good old fashioned Chinese humility. Maybe it's like they don't want to, incur scrutiny from the US government or anything, because obviously there were some like delays to the Fable and 5.6 release. But overall, very impressed with the model.
I think they said waits in 10 days or something.
Yeah, July 27th.
What do you think the strategy is for the delay between announcement of the model, the API being available, and no waits yet?
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be clear, this is all just pure speculation on my part. But I think one big reason is like they need to give the VLM and SU Lane guys enough time to make sure they can serve like this model performantly. Because if they just like dropped it today, you have all this hype, but then like everyone else serving the models won't giving you like 20 tokens per second or something. That's probably really bad for their brand. Doesn't really sort of like capture. So they have this like incredible opportunity to get a bunch of huge PR and a bunch of adoption, and that was sort of like kneecapped it a little bit. I think another possibility is that they are actively talking to the Together's, Fireworks's, Nebius's like Corys of the world to figure out how they can sign some sort of licensing deal and have them serve like the incremental capacity on GB300s or whatever.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think functionally this is really interesting because just to talk about the model architecture for a second, it's 2.8 trillion parameters. This does not fit in a B200. So you need to have B300, GB300, or I guess MI355X in order to be able to serve this model on a single system. Of course, you can do unique things where you have pipeline parallelism across multiple nodes and stuff, but that's going to really impact performance. So I think there's a lot of recipes being cooked up, and only people who have the latest and greatest chips are going to be able to serve this model. Let's go back to your comment on Google for a second. The idea that this model is truly competitive at the frontier at 2.8 trillion parameters kind of gives us some insight into how big the closed source frontier models are, right? Like it would be even more embarrassing if they're hitting these levels of performance and they're being compared to 10 trillion parameter models with a lot more active, right? We have to assume that this is in the same range as what Sol and Fable are, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think I still believe in sort of the competence and the crackness of all the OpenAI and Anthropic researchers. And if there are some people on Twitter who like to claim that like, current closed source is like 10 trillion total parameters or something. If that's actually true, like, guys, it's time to pack up the bags. Like, spies probably should crash like 50% like tomorrow. Like, it's over. I'm pretty confident that like Kimi K3 cannot be much bigger, much smaller. If anything, it might even be slightly bigger than the leading open source models today. If that's true, this actually further highlights a point we've been harping on for a while at SemiAnalysis, which is that the margins for these like closed source labs have to be absolutely mind-boggling, because if you're telling me, Kimi's probably not at negative margins when they're serving K3 at 315, $3 per million input tokens, $15 per million output tokens. That's sort of the same price as Sonnet. And so if you're telling me that like Fable is probably similarly sized, but Anthropic can charge $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output tokens, then this should just like, it may dispel any of the remaining concerns people have about the AI labs being these unprofitable businesses. Like selling tokens at API prices is just, it might be even better than like SaaS, honestly. It's an incredible business today.
Yeah. My view is that I believe the reason that this gap has closed right now is squarely put on the US government imposing restrictions on Anthropic and resulting in us not getting the actual best models that these guys have. And so they've artificially caught up, basically. Clearly, we see this with Mythos versus Fable. I can't use Mythos. I can only use Fable sometimes if I ask it nicely. 5.6 Sol, I think our house view is that it's not the biggest model OpenAI has ever trained. It's not the size of 4.5. To me, they have a bigger model somewhere. And I think the result is that we're going to be able to only access frontier intelligence if government entities allow us to. And that's a very interesting change to the setup going forward, because I think it represents an opportunity for many of the players that are in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th place to catch up to a limit, at which point it's okay to release everything and start to battle for user share without really being able to find the frontiers and have the frontier dominate. I think it's possible that, we see the frontier take another big step towards the end of the summer. It's possible the politics change a little bit.
Yeah.
It's possible that we start to find other, modalities beyond coding at which these guys can really improve, and they start exploring those like areas.